Greetings and salutations. Hi, I'm sorry for having been gone. I don't know if anyone would have actually noticed my leaving. I haven't uploaded in a few weeks, which I haven't gone that long without uploading in a little while. It's not objectively that long for me because I do have long periods of time where I don't upload, but I was pretty consistent for a long time with it. But I have been struggling a lot lately in more ways than one. My mental health is kind of scarily bad right now, but I also am just experiencing really severe creative burnout right now. I think because I was making videos like consistently once a week and sometimes more with Patreon stuff for a good portion of last year, I think I got to a point where even the ideas that I was excited to make when I sat down to film them, it felt more like a chore than something that was fun for me. And then it meant that it required so much more energy and effort from me because it wasn't something that felt like a treat for me. It felt like something that I had to do and had to be performative for and had to really be acting for. And so it became a much bigger task. And then when you kind of pair that with my mental health right now, it became a very tough thing because my depression is kicking my ass. I have been advised by multiple health professionals, I guess, on multiple occasions in the past week to be hospitalized, and I have come up with alternative solutions each time because being hospitalized is not a experience that is very helpful for me. It generally leaves me feeling worse. That is my personal experience. Please seek help in whatever way you need it when you are in crises, if you are ever in a crisis. Not that I wish that upon you, but please, obviously, don't just follow my example. Do what's right for you. But personally, for me, that's not the healthiest environment for me to go into. So I found alternative solutions. I found some at-home ways that, people then approved of. And I've just started new antidepressants as well as some sleeping medication. So hopefully that helps. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I just kind of wanted to make a video to update anyone who was maybe curious. I talk about this a bit on TikTok lives that I do, but not super in depth because I get kind of embarrassed about it. I mostly talk about it joking ways, but I do want to keep you guys updated because I like to normalize mental health and normalize it being really bad as well. I think even people who are very open about struggling, and I'm definitely guilty of this, we will talk about when things are bad, but we'll never actually share those moments. And not to say that I'm going to share anything that I think will be triggering for other people, but I want to be more transparent about when it's less pretty, because I think that mental health, even when it's normalized nowadays, can get quite romanticized, and I don't want to do that. I want to be like, hey, when it's really shit, that's normal too. That's just as normal as the stuff that we can romanticize, I guess. So that's where I'm at. Hopefully I feel comfortable enough to start creating more content for you guys again, just on a smaller scale for a little while. I don't know if I will feel comfortable with taking on anything too big for a little bit, but I have a lot of plans that I hope to at least make sometime during the year. But I also wanted to talk about, because obviously I've been trying to come up with my own ways of staying alive. I've kind of come up with systems with my therapist to get me out of the worst headspaces, and my main thing to do that always is escapism. Obviously, I'm very into escapism. I've built my life around it, but in my worst moments, it's the only way of grounding me sometimes too. While I'm very grateful for that, I've also I've gotten a bit sad about it recently, and it's occurred to me before, but I've gotten really in my head about how objectively kind of sad it is, I guess, that as a 20-year-old woman, I spend most of my time reading or watching things or playing video games with my phone turned off so that I don't have to be aware of the lack of people reaching out to me, the lack of friends I have, I guess. And I know that that's also partially my own fault because I'm not great at making friends, and I can get very overwhelmed, thanks to my mental health, with a lot of social interaction over the internet as well, I guess. Sometimes texting and phone calls can be very daunting to me in certain headspaces, but I also get very aware on particularly on weekend nights of my friends are kind of out doing things that, with other groups of friends that I'm not a part of. And that's not to make them feel guilty, that's just how it is, but it feels inherently lonely, so I will just spend all my time reading instead. In the past week, because the past week has been very, very difficult for me, I've read 5 novels. I'm halfway through my 6th. I think there is something sad about feeling a void completely with fiction. I'm very grateful, very, very grateful for that, but I'm living for fiction. I use fiction to fill a hole in my heart, I guess. Sometimes feel closer to fictional characters that I love than I do people I know, and all of my dreams are kind of centered around fiction. Like, I want to work in the film industry or be a writer, which are two very kind of large modes of escapism. But even then, like, just smaller dreams that I have, I always think of when I'm struggling, I relate everything to a certain fandom. Like, for example, when I got my heart broken last year, the first song that I wrote about it was called Gwen Stacy. I also wrote a song, like a breakup song about Tangled, where like the hook of it was about, you know, the fact that I had to find a new dream now. It's easier for me to kind of comprehend things, especially when I'm struggling, by relating it to fiction. So when I moved out and I was struggling with it, I thought of it as me, you know, being Rapunzel leaving my tower. And I always have to relate it to some form of fiction. Every kind of thing that I do, I compare to Annabeth Chase or Gwen Stacy, like, or Rapunzel or Harley Quinn, like one of my kins. Like, it's easier for me to cope with things that way. But even my equivalent of the floating lights, what Rapunzel's dreaming of the whole time, I have always thought of going to the Disney park someday as my floating lights. The reason why I want to go to the Disney parks is because in my head, that is the closest I will ever get to being a princess, hanging out with princesses, being a member of the Resistance on Rise of the Resistance, helping the Avengers out at Avengers Campus, like being a pirate or seeing pirates. The reason why is because it's a real life form of escapism, you know. Hi, editing Ashley here. I kind of failed to mention that not only is the Disney parks kind of like a real life fixation of like real life escapism in the forms of like wanting to be a princess and hang out with princesses and go into haunted mansions and all of that, it's also because the Disney parks feel like the only place where hope is actually a superpower and good actually wins and evil gets defeated and true love wins and blah, 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 blah. They feel like, you know, the only place where those sentiments are true. And that's why I love Disney films so much, is because I love believing in those ideals. I really do. And they feel real there, so it's escapism in that form as well, if that makes any sense. I'm someone who I eventually want to get into LARPing. I want to go to Ren fairs. All of that is because they're things that make me feel like a fictional character, which is fine. And I'm proud of how much of a nerd I am, but at the same time, there is something like inherently sad about that. I've been watching a lot of Critical Role lately, and I was like, how sad is it that I have like D&D dice and I watch other people play D&D and I have these like planned out characters for it, but I've never played a game because I don't have a group of IRLs to play with, and the idea of playing it over Zoom with people I don't know that well is very daunting because I have really severe social anxiety. And I was like, isn't that inherently sad too? Like, isn't there something sad about that? Like, I just feel everything with fiction. And sometimes I'm really okay with that, and I'm very grateful that I have that escapism and that fiction, because I don't think I'd be here without it. But like, I also kind of just wish that I had friends to share that with at the least. Because I love my hobbies, I do, but I use them to fill the loneliness, and I think I don't know, it would be nice if I had friends to pretend to be pirates with rather than watching other people, I guess. I mostly just wanted to update you guys on where I'm at, and if anyone was worried, tell you where I've been, and that I hope to kind of find some creative motivation soon, but I'm also not going to push myself to do that because I have a lot going on right now, and I don't think that would be super helpful. But thank you for being patient with me nonetheless. I really do love you guys very, very much, and I will see you hopefully very soon. Mwah.